Thing involving the algebra of the geometric elements is slope. And when you're dealing with slope, again, you can think of it in multiple ways. You can think of it as the ratio of the rise of a graph over the run. That also kind of indicates the rise is the vertical change. The vertical change, this symbol delta, this triangle symbol with the broader line here, indicates delta, which stands for change in. So this is the change in y, or the vertical change, over the change in x, the horizontal change. And then in algebraic terms, it's if you're given the coordinates x1, y1, and x2, y2, the slope is just going to be the difference of these y's or divided by the difference of the corresponding x's. Whatever y you use first, you need to use the corresponding x coordinate first as well. Okay, so if we look at this concept or definition of slope as the rise over run, in terms of just the general slope tendencies, if you have a line that goes up and to the right, when you look at its rise, so it has a positive rise and it has a positive run. A positive divided by a positive gives us an overall slope that has a sign that is positive. And now you could have also looked, if you thought of it as your rise is a negative and your run is a negative, it would still be the same thing, right? A negative divided by a negative is a positive. Okay, so up and to the right has a positive slope. Down and to the right, if we look at that, again, if we take our rise is positive, and our run is negative. A positive divided by a negative is overall sign negative. We could also have taken a negative rise and a positive run and still gotten the same result for that general tendency. Okay. So a graph that goes down and to the right is negative. What if we took a horizontal graph? Okay, if we move from point to point, what is the vertical shift? There's no vertical change. And what is the horizontal? It can either be positive or negative, right, depending on which direction you're going. So let's say we move here in the positive. What is 0 divided by a positive? 0, right? 0 divided by any number is 0. Okay? And 0 divided by a negative, if we thought of it in the other direction, is still 0. Okay, so a flat graph, a graph that is horizontal in nature, is considered a slope of 0. Okay, the last type of tendency that you're going to see is a vertical line. Okay, so again, if we're moving from point to point, the vertical shift, positive, what's the horizontal shift? There's none. So what is a positive divided by 0? Yeah, it can't be defined, right? There is no such thing. So a vertical line has a slope that is undefined. Okay, now, the value of 0 is different than the concept of no or none for the slopes. Right? This differs a little bit in the way that you might think of the concept of 0. Okay? So if I have no money, what does that mean? In terms of dollars, I have $0, right? But that's not what it means in dealing with slope. So if you have a graph that has no slope, okay, no slope doesn't mean a slope of 0. 0 is a very specific value. It's a horizontal slope. Okay? But if you have a graph with no slope is equivalent to saying it's undefined. Okay? It doesn't exist. So in that sense, if a slope is none or no slope, it means it doesn't exist, not that it has a slope of 0. And so again, be careful with that distinction. I'll try to make sure I separate them, and I'll try to use undefined as my descriptor for a vertical slope. But if you hear a slope of 0 versus no slope, those are two different things. Okay. All right. So Nick, give me a set of coordinates I can plot on here that fit within 7 and -7.
3, -1.
Okay. So 1, 2, 3, and -1. And give me one other one, please.
2, 5.
Okay, so 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. So if we're looking at these 2 points right here, and we want to find their slope, the first thing is, what would you expect? The slope between these is going to be positive, negative, 0, or undefined. It's going to be negative, right? It goes down and to the right. So right away, you should have that expectation. If you calculate a number that's not negative, you know you've done something wrong. Okay, so there's 2 ways that you can, or a couple main ways that you can find a slope. And the first way, and it's one that if it's relatively close or it's sketched on a graph, it's the easier way or more efficient way, and that's just to visually count the slope. So you can count the rise over run and find your slope. So if we move from this 0.25 to the 0.3 minus 1, if we move down, so our vertical change is down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we go down 6, and we go over 1. So our slope is going to be negative 6 over 1, which is negative 6. Okay, so there's our slope. Okay, so we can find that very easily by counting. In addition to counting, we can also find a slope by calculating. So if we wanted to calculate this slope, even just to confirm this, we take the difference of their y's. It doesn't matter which one you start with. So if I take 5 minus a negative 1, divide by the difference of their corresponding x's, 2 minus a 3. When you subtract, it's equivalent to adding the opposite. So I get 5 plus 1, which is 6, over a negative 1, and 6 divided by negative 1 is equal to a negative 6. Okay, so you can easily identify your slopes in that manner. Okay, let's say I take another example, and here let's do, I'm going to kind of move them further apart. So let's do these 2 coordinates. Okay, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, negative 7, negative 7, and here we have 5. Actually, I'm going to change this slightly. Let's make it right here. So this one is 6 and 5. Okay, I want you to see if you can find the slope between those 2 points for me, Chris. Okay, so if you're going to calculate this, you can take the difference of their y's. So 5 minus a negative 7. Divide by the difference of their corresponding x's. So 6 minus a negative 7. Subtracting is equivalent to adding the opposite. So we can simplify what we have here. 5 plus 7 is 12. 6 plus 7 is 13. There's no reduction in this fraction. So we have a slope of 12/13. Okay, were we expecting our slope to be positive?